السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. والتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين.
Turn on your.
وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Barakallahu feekum for showing up on time. Apologies that we were having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm going to present to you slide sets from a few years ago. So I don't remember exactly what's on the slide set, but I can't find the one that I edited. It's lost in the cloud somewhere, or a laptop in the airline. I don't know where it is. So khair, alhamdulillah. But nonetheless, before we launch into this presentation, I actually want to do a little temperature check in the room to get a sense of how you all are feeling after yesterday. And so, floor is yours, not mine. How are you all doing?
Yesterday was too warm.
It's too warm in the room. Okay, alhamdulillah. But I meant.
Some of us are back, so you feel good.
Some left. The last row is gone already. And also, how's it going? This is what you expected, this is not what you expected, because we're at the halfway point. So we need to change, we need to know now. So okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, inshallah ta'ala. So we will launch in. Again, I think we have to think we're halfway there. We have to renew our intentions. Inshallah, I hope yesterday you had a good evening. We will get you out of here early today as well, so you can enjoy some of the sunlight. And this afternoon, as I mentioned, there will be some much more interactive engagement with you all, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to be able to complete our day today with excellence and ihsan, gaining beneficial knowledge. The 5 questions that we covered here are in different order than we initially intended, right? So we've talked a little bit about the human essential nature. Maybe you can see my pointer here. We talked yesterday about our human beings unique in the universe, but now we're going to go back. So I want to present to you this notion of is humankind moving towards a post-transhuman future. And then after my presentation, inshallah ta'ala, Sheikh Omar Qureshi will talk to you about human origin. So it is a little bit out of order, but they're all connected, inshallah. You'll see the narrative thread extending through my presentation and Sheikh Omar's today. I mentioned on Friday night, for those who are here, that this topic, this seminar is predominantly set in what we're worrying about, or what I'm worried about, what humanity should worry about, is where we're going, right? That a lot of things we think are science fiction or science future, perhaps, but they're science reality today, such as the notion that we in medicine can integrate biotechnological parts into our we can integrate technological parts into our biological parts of bodies as well. And that this is something where physicians are going to be increasingly have to think about. We have done it for many years, right? I mentioned to you that the first human cyborg was Kevin Warwick, but I did not mention to you Peter. Right? So Peter Scott Morgan, there was an individual who was confronting ALS. And because, as you might know, in ALS, you lose control over your musculature, bodies, he started to do progressive interventions to prevent loss of function, including getting a G-tube before he lost alimentary control, including having eye surgery so that he could interact with screens, including having his voice box removed. And he has wrote a book about that. So he was called the first person was called Captain Cyborg, yesterday, I told you about on Friday, Kevin Warwick. Peter was known as a human cyborg. And so my point is that, again, it is not in the past, but it's today. I shared with you the notion about us thinking that genetic engineering to live on far gone, sort of this is tight in the moon, right, is not happening, but there are programs today that are doing some sorts of genetic manipulation to think about how we can have the advantage of multiple species, if I use that term, there are enhancements within our own beings for various purposes. So today, what I believe we should be considering for those who are practicing physicians or going to be, inshallah ta'ala, is that if biomedical interventions change our body, are we slowly transforming ourselves, right, into something beyond the human being? And then if we're doing so, then are we moving from a from a human being to a transhuman being to then a post-human being, right? So the notion of transhumanism, which we'll hear about in a second, is just that. That's the intermediate state which to a post-human future. Obviously, that's to at least engage with manipulation around the body, you need some scientific disciplinary background. That means you will involve physicians some sort of way. So are we wittingly or unwittingly contributing to this feature? And will we be unwittingly or wittingly contributing to this feature? For us in this room, we have to think about what our tradition says about this, right? How Islam informs us to think about the mission of medicine. So we will have some conversation on that. It won't be very full today, but I'm going to leave you with that at the outset, that you should be thinking about what your tradition says is the meaning, purpose, boundaries, contours of this profession of medicine. And if you have not yet answered that, then you should answer that before you enter the profession. Because otherwise, right, we are just consumers of some extra cultural paradigm. And then we are not critical consumers of that. Okay. Yesterday, you heard Dr. Masood talk about human nature. So implicitly, if we consider human nature to be involving both a body and a soul, and if the society validates changes in our being, the question becomes, what are our values, right, around this change? First, what we think of human nature, body plus soul, body itself, but what are our values around this change? So implicitly, yesterday this point was made, and so I'll go off topic for a second, but we were talking about the idea that if the human being is seen only as a composition of the physical substratum, that is what's determinative of the human being, and determinative of your personality, and determinative of your nature, then changes in that physical structure will lead to changes in that human nature, to that personality, to that being, right? So if a house is composed of just material, the material cause, and I change the material the house is made of, and it moves from say a wood to an aluminum siding or whatever else might be, I've changed something about that, right? Now, if I'm just a physical structure and we say that on top of the physical structure, something magical happens, right? So yesterday you heard the idea of emergence phenomena, emergent properties. So something magical happens on top of the physical structure that produces the idea of consciousness, perhaps, say. Then if the physical substrata has changed, then that epiphenomenon here would also change. So you might say it's not a big deal, we're changing the body. But for the philosophy here, the notion of that the body is upon the physical body is upon which these epiphenomena occur, then actually it's a very weighty thing to do to change the body. Particularly those parts of the body that we think lead to those epiphenomena, those emergent properties. Lastly, right, so if our values have, if our tradition has something to say about this, are we contributing to a future that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants? Yes, right. Okay. So today we're going to apply scriptural and scientific concepts to investigate these questions. So the first part of the conversation is going to be about ideology terms, basically, right? Here's some, I'm going to share with you some of these social terms. I'm going to assess whether you know them so that we can skip forward or not. And then we're going to have some critical analysis about those terms and how it relates to the profession of medicine. And lastly, there'll be some dialogue here to think about interaction with you all. So inshallah, there will be some engagement where you will do some activities together in teams. Okay, Sheikh Hamza Karamali shares the screen with me. He also shares this lecture with me. So I'll give you some of his background, but mashallah, he also, I'll tell you about myself in a second, but he also has this dual intersectional identity. He started off his studies in engineering. And from there, he went abroad, actually, spent a lot of time in Syria, Jordan, Pakistan, Syria, and studied in the seminary studies. And he switched his sort of career. So he also went to Pakistan and got a Alamiya degree in Pakistan. And then he left sort of engineering, computer engineering. Perhaps let me not misspeak. I think he might have finished his degree, but he left that as a profession. And he recently, I think 4 or 5 years ago, started the Syria education, which is in Canada and in Turkey, where that institute is about engaging the contemporary challenges of society through a firm-rooted Islamic identity. So he engages with from high school through postgraduate students and develops curricula. So he has been a very critical part of this project. And you will see some of the slides I'll present for him, so he's not able to join us today. So my path is one that's been intersectional in these two areas of Islamic biomedicine for many years. Actually, from the outset, one must say that I studied in seminary during high school. And then from there, I spent some time, I'm sharing this with you so you get a sense, it's late now, but you probably get a sense of my background already. But nonetheless, I spent some time in Cairo, studied, have a degree in Arabic, I studied in some of the halaqat there, Sharia, so on and so forth. And then proceeded to do postgraduate work in Islamic studies at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. And here at IIIT, I mentioned I shared some time in the offices upstairs with some amazing people. And then since then, I've spent some time in seminaries studying here and there, but engaging in research mostly. On the medical side, I have a degree in biomedical engineering. And from there, I went to medical school at Cornell and spent time doing research. So I'm a emergency medicine physician, but I also have a degree in healthcare research. And my focus of that work was to think about how Islam, or let me say it more specifically, how Islamic values, identity, and beliefs are used by Muslims to engage with the healthcare system. So how it informs the healthcare seeking behaviors, healthcare challenges they face, and then also how that informs the identity of Muslim physicians and the challenges they face in the healthcare environment. So that work, I also did a fellowship in the McLean Center in Clinical Medical Ethics. And alhamdulillah, that's kind of my background. So it's continued to be trying to be intersectional and understanding how these two domains of knowledge intersect, both from a theoretical level, but a practical level. Sheikh Hamza, I mentioned to you, he spent time in both areas as well. So here are the concepts. As I said, this can either move us forward, or we'll have to rewind. It's up to you, choose your own adventure. But the first question I have, and just to show of hands, we're not going to use Kahoot because I didn't set it up. So that was 3 years ago. I don't think it's still valid. So let's start with this idea. So transhumanism, who has heard of that term? Raise your hands fully so I can get a sense. Okay, so who is going to define the term for us? Okay, so you've heard the term, you want to define it. That's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Or is someone saying something, cut them off.
About if the transmission of the original human being to another being.
Yeah. So moving from a human state to a non-human state or a further state. Okay. Human enhancement, is everybody familiar with that term? Raise your hands, raise your hands. Yes? Okay, anybody want to define that for us? Go ahead.
I guess where you enhance some of the intrinsic properties of humans, like sense, something like
Can't
that.
use the term in the definition, so.
Where you augment human sense.
Augment, say again?
Augment like a human sense, where
Okay.
let's say if you lose eyesight or you start to lose eyesight, you install like a chip or camera that integrates with the optic nerve or something.
Okay, good. All right, inshallah. And then disease. Everybody know anybody heard that term? Disease? Only one person.
Sense of health.
Anybody want to define disease for us?
Ailment, I would say.
Ailment?
Yeah.
That's just a synonym. I don't want any definition. All right, if you're in Arabic class, this wouldn't go very well. If you need the whole thing, so. It's an ailment, but I need more than that. That's a synonym. So define disease. Deviation from the normal. Okay, mashallah. So there's some good terms here. All right, let's take that. Okay. From the Islamic side, we're going to talk about these two terms, tabdil and tabdil. So people have you heard that term? Tabdil. Okay. No? Raise your hands, please. I'm being serious.
It's change, right?
You're asking me or telling me?
In Arabic.
You want to know the Arabic term?
I'm guessing.
Tabdil and yeah, the change. That's yeah. They mean change, but okay. So a few people.
Career is Change. Tabdeel is exchange.
Exchange
Tabdeel.
for one thing for another.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But can you define them for me from an Islamic perspective? No. Okay. What about this idea of ahsan taqweem? You heard, actually, Dr. Hassan, I think mentioned that.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, what's that mean? Define it for me. What causes?
It's references sort of the humans, if they acted the best way that they did.
Okay, best of creation.
Perfection, you can say perfection in creation, which yesterday that Dr. Mahsood was mentioning, it's only physical or somebody else was mentioning, but I think it's both. I mean, Ruh is also perfection, right? Ruh and body and spirit, both perfection. I would think of that ayah, the tafsir of that ayah, and Sanat in both sense. Not just physical.
I'm not, you're telling me, I'm not.
No, yesterday.
I'm not answering the question. I just want to know if you know.
In presentation, he was mentioning Asanet Tatmeen and Summa Radadnahu Asfala Safila.
Yes.
So he said the physical structure is perfect, but you can spiritually go down. But
Yeah.
I think in the first part means both body and perfection in both body and spirit.
Okay,
And then the worst part would be the nafs, Asfala Safila.
okay. Okay,
And
all right,
disease.
so let's move forward. Immortality. I should have put the Arabic there again 2 years ago. Yes,
I just know what that means. Do you want the definition?
tell us.
You don't die. Don't die.
People
Never
don't die. Okay, so Masha, you have some prior knowledge here. We'll see what changes or doesn't change as we move forward. Perhaps we get a little bit more refined and nuanced, or maybe it stays the same. Okay, this is the first video on transhumanism that people were Googling, so if you can put that up.
Most of us would consider the end of the human race as a catastrophe. There are some, however, who will not only rejoice at it, but want to hasten the day it arrives. Transhumanists look forward to a future in which Homo sapiens is superseded by a better, smarter, fitter model, humanity 2.0. Humans are in dire need of improvement. Any species that causes huge damage to our environment, can't feed itself even though it has enough food, and fights countless wars costing millions of lives must surely benefit from an intelligence upgrade. Our lifespans are short, our final years usually characterized by diminishing health and vitality, often accompanied by a drop-off in cognitive capacity. 1 in 3 people born in 2015 are expected to get dementia. Is this really the best we can hope for? Transhumanists think not. Aging could be stopped and even reversed. Enhancements could dramatically raise our IQs and make us stronger and fitter. We might even be able to leave our fragile bodies behind and upload ourselves to computers, living forever in virtual worlds. Improving humanity through science and technology could radically change us. Such a new beginning would in effect be the end of humanity as we know it. Many transhumanists see this as not only desirable, but inevitable. The scientist and futurist Ray Kurzweil believes we are approaching what he calls the singularity, the point at which computers become smart enough to learn for themselves, after which they will rapidly become smarter and smarter. The future belongs to artificial intelligence. The only way for humanity to survive is to embrace it and become wholly or partially artificial ourselves. The thought of being replaced by a new form of humanity is bound to be unsettling. But transhumanists think we would be wrong to lament the end of humanity as we know it, when what replaces us would be so much better. It would be like wishing children never grew up, or that Homo erectus never evolved into Homo sapiens. If the transhumanists are right, we could be one of the last generations of humans to roam the planet.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.
So I mentioned there's a thread, there should be a thread. So what's the thread here? That you all heard about?
What was the question?
Thread, commonality, the underlying idea that is premised, the philosophical foundation for premising this idea of transhumanism.
We're not
That's the
perfect.
outcome.
That we're not perfect.
That we're not perfect,
Yeah, there's
Okay.
something better.
there's something better. That's one. Others? Sorry? Yeah, right.
And
Sorry, what did you-
in the name of progress, we could be deprogressing,
The name of progress, right.
regression.
Right, so that's the good, so three people are responding. So the one idea is embedded this idea of evolution, right? One is that there is something to be had better, that we are somehow imperfect, and we mentioned the notion of asset being what that means, talking about that. And then, right, so these ideas are important for us to grapple with. Again, embedded within the outcome of perhaps immortality, or the processes by which we might get there, if that's the idea, are some philosophical values, right, assumptions about who we are and what we should be doing about that. So the essential elements of human transhumanism are the following, right? That human beings are an unfinished product of this process of evolution. And so then the idea is, okay, well, if we are doing this naturally and we're all evolving, then why not help that process along and direct it? So if you're going somewhere in a car, why not, right? Why not fix the destination you want to get to? Change it in the GPS. So the goal of transhumanists, generally speaking, is to use bioscience and technology to extend our limits, right? And those limits are opposed by a physical structure. So therefore, ultimately, to improve, right, our physical structure will allow us to then get rid of human frailties and ultimately the human condition. So the exemplar activities are the following, right? The three that are involved most commonly are integrating body parts that are better. I mean, so integrating technologically and producing synthetic body parts that are better somehow super functioning. The second one is to upload and preserve the mind. That should have quotes around it, whatever the mind is, somehow can preserve and upload it. And then lastly, to genetically engineer our bodies so they have better function. That be for our environment presently or for the future environments. So those are the three exemplar activities. Incorporating super body parts, preserving the mind, and genetically engineering our bodies. So for those of you who are medical school, you learn about these three things? These three activities? No? Cyrus doesn't know what.
I mean, like in reference to transhumanism, I think not.
But you learn about super functioning body parts,
I guess perhaps like in terms of prosthetics.
right? There's an entire field of prosthetics.
But I mean, in terms of like some other things like uploading, preserving the mind, like that's something we don't really do.
Okay, so maybe one of the three is still science future, okay, fiction. So with that sort of the dynamic, let's now move a little bit towards how we think about integrating our religious values in the practice of medicine, at least in the philosophical substrata. So I'm going to kind of now take you through a presentation that perhaps will challenge the way you think about medicine. Okay, so firstly, on the background for us as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, and our scripts give us many ideas about what medicine is for. And I'm going to share a few with you here. If we were to start with the idea of what is the moral status, because everybody likes to start. When we think about Islam, we always say, let's start with sort of scriptural text we talked about yesterday. That's where our normativity is rooted. So what are we told in the nusus around healing and curing disease and illness? Well, if I were to ask you, you probably would come up with these sorts of scriptural verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, or the Quran talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being in control of disease, healing, and cure. I imagine these are old half-rolled, right? So and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran says the verse right, that when I am ill, it is he who cures me. Or this hadith, I'm sure all of you know, so I'm going very, very quickly through these, but I'm sure you all know this hadith. But there are any other renditions of this version of this hadith, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not send down a da, which you can define that many different ways, except for that he also sends down for it, it's cure, right? Shifa, healing here. And then Rasulullah actually in a hadith we're told and commands us to seek healthcare, right? So thou here, right? Thou Allah. And the same idea here, right? That Allah does not send down, or in this case, does not create. Made disease and is cure. So that's the idea that this is a theocentric view of health and disease, illness, and cure, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dominion. Right? Nothing old hat, right? Okay. So if we were to take that, then one might say, and this is not today's talk is not about this, and other talks that kind of go through this entire model. But the notion that this is what we would say a not just a theocentric, but a pietistic cosmology, right? That's borrowed from a scholar friend of mine. But there's a pietistic cosmology under which health, illness, disease, cure operate. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the one who sends the disease affliction and the control of the outcome, but the human being is engaging with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the actions the human being is taking. And that requires a sort of comportment. I'll say adab, right? So one might be ill or diseased or have a challenge within their mind, body, or soul. And then one takes a journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, utilizing perhaps the medical system right here. So you seek healthcare, but ultimately it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attention that needs to be drawn to this individual, for he is the one who then, once divine attention is given to one's plight, allows for that healing to take place. Right, so I said the same thing, but in a different way, right? A little broader notion of that. Now, importantly, there are scriptural texts, and I actually don't know what comes next on the slides, as I told you, they're 2 years old. But there are scriptural texts that talk about this notion of adab specifically, and maybe they're here, and they're not. So, till next time. But there are hadith that talk about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he afflicts his servant with illness, he appoints angels to go visit that individual. And if that person praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then a certain outcome occurs. And if the person doesn't, then a certain outcome occurs. So when the people, he says to the angels that when people visit the individual, which is a for us, right? Visiting that how you treat those who visit you is actually being observed by malaika who report back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my point is the comportment one has with their disease is incredibly important for an outcome. And there's hadith, Rasulullah says, an individual you visit person, what are we supposed to say when we visit a person? Okay, that's the dua. But if someone's sick and it's saying, oh, I'm sick. Yeah, the whole run, inshallah, right? What does that mean? Yeah, that we give them hope that this is a purification, right? So Rasulullah visited an elderly individual, and he's and Rasulullah said right, and the person said, no, this is he was febrile. This is an illness that will lead this old man, to his grave. And Rasulullah said, not do that. And this is what's going to happen. Meaning, again, the way you deal with those who visit you is very important. In our society today, we forget this is an obligation upon us to visit, but then we also forget that we need to be able to have the proper comportment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us and all of our relatives and all our families the ability to have the right comportment when we are afflicted with disease. May he actually not afflict us with disease, but maybe if we get it, it will be tahura. So Rasulullah tells us other things.
I didn't understand, a little bit confusion about this. You are mentioning about how the patient should react to the
Yes.
visitors,
Yes.
or the
No,
visitors
the patient
should do what?
act towards the visitors.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, I didn't hear, sorry, I didn't get that point.
So again, I don't want to spend too much time on it because this is not that lecture. My point was that the comportment the individual has, the patient, in this case is not a patient, right? It's an individual who is ill, afflicted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The way in which they interact with those who visit them is of incredible importance.
It's with sabr and all that. I mean,
Sorry, what?
to get more reward, you're saying, for doing sabr or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip over this, because this is a very detailed notion, and I apologize if I'm not making sense on
No,
that
that's
idea.
okay.
I just was telling you where my mind is.
I do this.
Okay,
That's okay.
so, and Rasulullah tells us other things about, again, the moral status of seeking healthcare. I shared this hadith, but then, and this hadith as well, right? But then there's others that Rasulullah tells us about when he was in Islam Miraj, when he went up. And there was a group of individuals who were saved from reckoning, from hisab actually, because of their leaving off treatment. And the statement here, again, I've underlined the Arabic for you here, or highlighted the Arabic for you, right? That there are people who did not engage in cauterization. There's other scriptural statements, but it also says that there is found things, three things, and including this notion of qadr. But I don't like this, I don't like qadr. My point here is that if you think about now the larger cosmology, right, the pietistic cosmology, it also says seek treatment, but then also recognizes that there is a maqam of individuals who have forgone or forwent, let's say, treatment, in this case, qadri, and their reward is Jannah bighayr hisab. Not only that, they're considered to be individuals who have وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. They have this firm trust and tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our tradition is one that recognizes that there is now two poles. Yes, seek, Allah is in control, but you can also be amongst those who don't seek. Which leads to the idea, again, this is not this lecture, that for us in our tradition, seeking healthcare is not fard, meaning at all times. And it's exceptional, it's contingent to seek healthcare. If you don't seek healthcare, you're not immediately thought of as sinful. That's the base ruling in our tradition. Because you have to put both scriptural texts and hold them in tension. Okay? All right. So now back to the lecture at hand. I want to ask you a question. And can you tell me what is the relationship between doctors and diseases? A couple of ideas. And those who are full-fledged doctors, please don't speak. I want to hear what the to-be doctors are thinking. Student doctors. Doctors of formation. Go ahead.
I would say I think the relationship is that physicians are meant to act as a tool, as a person that can help and aid the patient.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I think in the healthcare system, you can never force the patient to actually take medication or accept the treatment. You simply lay out the options and allow things.
But I'm not asking about the doctor-patient relationship. I'm asking about the doctor and the disease. So if disease is on one side and the doctor on the other side, and you were to try to draw a cartoon, what would you say the doctor is doing to the disease?
Trying to solve it.
Solve it. Okay, good. Good.
Kind of similar to this in terms of, I guess, a tool or being contributing to either helping to prevent disease,
Prevent. Okay.
treat, or like,
One idea. Too many ideas.
sure, okay, then prevent.
Prevent. So you said you're going to solve it. You said you're going to prevent it. Okay. One more idea. Go ahead.
Navigate it, because not all diseases are treatable. Some things are chronic and you just live with it. So it's more so navigating that kind of difficulty, helping the patient navigate it.
Mashallah. Okay, very good. So this is an abnormal group of individuals here, because usually the first thing people say is cure, right, heal, or relieve. That they're essential. Well, this is good. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's a different sorts of ideas. But there are various metaphors that are involved how we think about doctors and diseases. And the first metaphor oftentimes medicine share is we're here to cure, heal, and ameliorate. They go back to their essays that they got into medical school for. We want to cure disease, heal it, right? Healing it. The other metaphor often is this combat, fight, terminate disease, right? So if you're a cartoon and you're a doctor here, you're like shooting at the disease, right? Or they're like, what? They're just getting rid of it. The idea. So prevention was close, but the idea is actually terminate. I mean, be a terminate, get rid of the disease. What's often not brought up, none of the people in the room this either, is define. And you should have looked at that, because what did I say of your doctor disease? What's the third thing on the top of the slide? Okay, so help define disease, right? That actually essential aspect, and perhaps you don't think about that as your professional identity, but truly you help define or define diseases. So I want to ask you again to think about that so we can now have a more informed conversation. Does an individual, you're going to raise your hands, does a child who is born deaf have a disease? Yes? So less than half. MashaAllah. Okay. Does a person who is being unable, as a family, in this case it would be a couple, but say a person who's unable to conceive have a disease? Very few people. So, okay, so tell me why the first doesn't have a disease. People didn't raise their hand.
There is some anatomical problem.
I like to have the medical students actually tell me. Yes.
It depends on the context of the culture, because sometimes if they're born to a deaf parent, they might not want for it, like the child having a discussion with a philosophy major is just like, can we define something in the disease that have like cultural implications and stuff like that?
I'm not fully understanding, so say it,
So it depends on the culture that they're born into.
Okay.
There's facilities for them to have a
okay,
proper upbringing.
okay, so a child who's born without the ability to hear, if they're in the right environment that has supports, they might not be considered to have disease. Is that accurate? Okay, go ahead.
What I would define disease as like this, so, I'm having a condition that has some amount of suffering
Okay,
associated with it. So, and this idea of disability, there's like a social, sociological component of it where to some extent disability is a construct by society as well. So, so in certain situations, even if it's not considered disease, it could still be a disability because the society, the way that it's structured, does not cater to people who have those.
yes, I will get into those things, but I still don't understand, so I'm gonna ask you, so if a child born without the ability to hear is not diseased because?
Because it is, for people who are not deaf, it's considered a limitation, but you can also consider on the spectrum of ability.
Okay, so there's a spectrum of abilities and perhaps some people don't have the ability to hear, that's just part of humanity. Yeah, I hear, okay, all right, what about the second one? Does a person who is not able to conceive have a disease? Go ahead. Or not have a disease, and most of you said they don't have a disease, tell me why.
I think if it's a physiological reason, like they're postmenopausal, then it's not a disease. But if it's for any other reason and they're like of reproductive age and it's their disease expected, like process that should be there.
So you're changing your answer.
I'm thinking out loud. So I think if we're talking in like normal reproductive age, then yes.
Okay, so there is disease. How about someone who thinks it's not disease? Tell me why.
I guess maybe the way I'm thinking about it is diseases. Limiting, to like fully, be part of the full human experience, so if you have like the disease, you can define it as something like your quality of life, you can really just engage the world, like getting the full human experience, but should brought up the example like for women in menopause. Kind of, it's part of the human experience.
Okay.
For women and stuff, so.
But then you also change your answer.
No, because the other part is just to consider that when we talk about some of these things, is it needed for you to
To
have the
experience.
full
Got
human
it, got it,
experience?
got it, got it. Very good,
Not to conceive each other.
very good. So just let me rephrase this. I want to just kind of a little bit rephrase it. So the idea is that there's a spectrum of human experiences using your idea here. And perhaps this is not essential to have a full human experience. It doesn't make you subhuman. Or not, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move to the kind of the ideas that were mentioned, I think, by Miriam a bit. I don't know if you're looking at my slides, don't look at slides, laptop's off, right? If you look at the slide set that you already got, but there are at least 4 overlapping terms that not fully overlapping, but have this notion of disease. And they all relate to how there's a power dynamic between them, meaning that who is the individual, what group of individuals set in motion this notion of disease. Okay, so the first one was, as you mentioned, like disease, dis-ease, being ill at ease, as the term says, defined by the subject often, right? The person who is feeling ill at ease is going to say, I am diseased, right? And this leads to certain notions of what health is. Okay. The second might be the idea of disability, also mentioned by Ryan, right? That an individual might have lesser than equal ability for others. Now, who defines that level of ability that individuals should have as humans? It could be that the subject defines that, hey, I should be able to walk, right? Or it could be society. You should be able to walk to live in our society. You need to be able to walk, right? We don't have facilities or whatever to do that. So there is some notion of perhaps definition of what that is, what that level of ability is by the subject or by society, oftentimes to get it flourishing. Right, that we want to be able to have individuals be able to live the lives they would like to live, to be able to have sa'ada, let's say, flourishing in society. Okay, another notion is disorder. Now here you're going to get to the sense, okay, that people should have certain aspects physiologically, but also psychologically, right? To have society be orderful. And I'm signaling to you all these diseases in your mind, right? So if people have certain types of personality traits that are not orderful, they have personality disorders, yeah, to which then treatments are applied. Or physiologically, we say you should be able to have mitochondria that function a certain way. They do not function a certain way. Therefore, you have disorders. Therefore, you have a disease. Right? This should be part of your first week in medical school. But that's kind of another notion. The last would be dysfunction, where now the abnormality or impairment or deviation from the norm, someone else mentioned this, we're talking about disease, right, can be related to physiology, social behavior. But when you get dysfunction, you're bringing in a more expansive notion, not the disorder, there's a threshold, but function now has not how a theoretic should be, but how practically it should be. Right? So disorder might be even theoretical, but function certainly is practical. Okay, so it's a little broader than that. But all of these things lead to definitions of disease. And physicians, again, are involved, perhaps not in the first, but even in the first at times. Right? You're ill at ease, but by being able to have a child, perhaps you need to be eased by having a child. I can help you how to do that. Not right or wrong, just descriptive of reality. So these are issues that are defined by professional society. So let me walk you through an example. This example has to do with human height. So I'll set up the example in this sort of way. We were talking about the thread here is that the human being is a biological machine, right? That's the notion of transhumanism, right? And that we should then upgrade our biological machine so we can have more full experiences. So, and yesterday, Dr. Mosu was saying, and I just said at the beginning of our seminar today, that if you change the biological substrate, perhaps the epiphenomena, right, that we don't know about, the hard problem consciousness might change. So standing in for this, I'm using the idea of human body and height. Okay, it's not a one-on-one mapping, but height is a physical property, an aspect of human. Okay, if I were to say to you that we have a 35-foot human outside, what would you say to me?
Oh, no.
You would say there's no such thing as a human thing. Can there be a 35-foot human being outside?
No.
I mean, we can read Jonathan Swift, and you have the little Pusha, and you have the Brahmdunag, right? But those were fantastical areas because those types of humans don't exist. Neither giants nor those Lucians, right? So in your minds, there's some notion of there's a normality whether of human being to have certain heights. But if we had a 35-foot human or a 3-inch human, you would say impossible. Okay, so height is a property. That's what human being. So human height has been changed. No dispute, I would imagine, from this group. We have sociological data, we have archaeological data that human height has changed over the years, right? So this is a 100-year span. You see here both male and female heights have changed. Largely maybe plateauing and some of it going upwards over the century. Okay. Now, if you're looking at specific places, same thing. Right, so that's around the world, but now we have data around the United States. You know, I guess there was no humans before 1940 in Saudi Arabia, and there are no humans after 1940 in Malaysia. What happened with all that? What happened? They're gone, right? But human height has been changing in specific countries at different rates. But this actually, the slide shows that there are some changes. What do you think was happening in Turkey at the time when they declined? Yeah, what time is it? Yeah, revolution was happening. Their glasses, caliphate was disintegrating. And my point here is that social determinants of health had impacted upon human height. So it's not that this is constant gain, there are things that impact, right? Okay, but average speaking wise, you have this sort of curve here, where one would say that men and women have different heights. What type of curve is this?
Normal curve.
Normal. Who says normal? Who says normal? You guys don't want to raise your hands today. I'm still drinking my first tea, so I should be tired. You shouldn't be tired. Yeah, when you say normal, you're doing more than describing this. You're making a judgment. Term normal has a normative component, right? So what happens? People who are outside of these 95% true standard deviations, what are they called? Avian.
Outliers.
They're avian, they're abnormal. And that's what happens. That's actually what happens, right? Because you could call this a bell curve,
Right.
but you guys don't call it a bell curve, call it a normal curve.
Right.
Okay, so that's the notion of the biological. So we talked about the human height changes, that's the biological. The social impacts the height that changes, but then what happens? To get the disease, you apply a normative label, call it normal. Then you get the cultural aspect. So all diseases are biosocially, culturally constructed. And you all do that on the daily. And your practice shows that. What's this?
Growth curve.
So what?
Growth chart.
Growth chart. Okay, so who's gonna tell me what's going on in this growth chart? Again, I would like to privilege the to-be physicians. No one?
They're falling off the growth chart.
Who's they?
This patient.
This patient, how?
Once they hit like their preteen years, 11, 12, they're no longer normal / average stature height.
Yeah, so she's pointing out these drops, right? So when you're a pediatrician and your first sort of decade plus of life is always plotting your growth curves, right? So your weight and height, and then this is the 95 percentile sort of bell curve. So your upper bound, lower bound, and as you get off, it's called you're falling off the growth curve, right? So in this case, in height, right, not weight. So when that happens, what do we do as physicians? Physicians can speak. What do we do?
Diagnose them.
Find the cause, right? That's your job. But what happens when you don't find the cause? You still call it a disease. Look at you all. You guys are amazing. So read that. Idiopathic means I don't know why. But you're still short. That's idiopathic short. No known reason, right? No evidence of systematic endocrine nutritional chromosomal abnormalities. So a physician ain't gonna let go of their power. We know that in the masjids, now we know that in the physician clinic too. Right? So I don't know why biologically, I don't know why socially, but certainly culturally you're not good enough. And I want to tell you your disease. Not only that, I want to tell you that your disease, we're going to look at some of the sociological data about that. So I'm going to convince you, okay, I'm playing a role here, right? I'm not saying this, but I'm going to convince you why this is not good. So, old mother of child who might not have full height. Let's explain to you the data. So here's data. You have data. Your scientific basis is very sound. So this is a large study from the UK, right? A huge study. 120,000 people, men and women from biobanks, and they looked at what the impact of height was. So generally, there's other studies like this. There's some meta-analysis, but what happens to taller men in society? Taller men have high levels associated with high levels of education and higher incomes. In whatever society, okay? Whether that be Turkey, Malaysia, or the US, okay? What do we know about the other? Shorter kids, right, are prone to more bullying in school. which can lead to mental health disorders. Okay, psychological effects. So you have positive for being tall, negative for being short, beyond the normal curve. No dispute, right? Do you guys think that's normal? This is data. Now, what happens to deviance? Shorter men and taller women. Disagree? No disagreement. Crowd is silent. So this is also a problem perhaps for those who want to flourish. Perhaps, although let me say this, that men benefit more. Because men who are married have higher life expectancies. Women who are married, I will not say. Look at that, didn't say no, right? All right, so there's some positive gain here. Now, in light of sociological data, what do you think that mother's gonna say?
Fix it.
Let's fix it. And what are you gonna say? Of course I can fix this. Of course. Let me show you some JAMA studies of how I can fix this. You can do nothing. There's no cost for that. But I can do various amounts of hormonal treatments. Right? And we can get some gain in height from 1 to 3 inches. Sound good? Look at that column here in the middle. Psychological mental harm. What does that column say to you?
We don't know what the point was.
Right? I can make you taller, but what happens to the benefit? Harm. I don't know. So yeah, I call you a disease because I don't know why you got this. You're just short. I want to give you a treatment. I don't know if it's beneficial, but guess what? I'm a doctor. All right. So trust me. Very good. So this is a very important function you all have. Right, I'm being glib here, but that's the reality. There are, you might say this is not actually, I'm just doing a sort of a hyperbolic caricature. Yeah. So, but this is the definition power that physicians have, right? Okay, so one might take it further, and I'm not gonna go to say I'm talking about childless disease or having high blood pressure disease, because what we look at some biological data, we look at sociological data, and then we say perhaps this is a disease, right? But the reality is that we embed technological solutions to be able to do that, right? So if we didn't have an ability to manipulate hormones or give hormones, synthetic hormones, do you think we would talk about getting any badly or stature? No, right? So as biotechnology advances, we can have solutions to problems that didn't exist. Or were not in existence before, but now are because society expects. Many of us are wearing glasses, right? Is this normal to not be able to see at my age? I don't know. I can't see you all, but at some point, I would imagine when we didn't have these things, people say, okay, yeah, as he ages to this age, he's not gonna see as well, so let's help him out. Right? No one's saying it's wrong or right, it's describing reality. So you have a role within that. Okay, so the main points of this part was diseases can be variably defined. Bioscience, right, can define disease based on the idea of normal curves. Biomedicine can then develop treatments for those. But ultimately, human bodies are changing. And as human bodies change, technology advances, normality changes. We make that term normal there, not Bell here. And so we then, as physicians, have an incredible role to play in not only define disease and treatment, but also what happens to the human being. Maybe we'll have 35-foot humans and 3-inch humans at some point. Maybe we can, I don't know. But then you will say, this is a human spectrum. So that claim that human bodies are changing, right? The biological substrata is a claim that's an empirical proposition because we see it. We see it every day. Human bodies are changing. People are growing, right? People are then also doing the opposite as they get osteoporosis. So this is something that we all know, right? Okay. Now, typically, from a bioethical standpoint, we differentiate between therapy and enhancement based on three dividing lines, three sort of conceptual lines. And they all are porous. First one is the following, and this gets back to the role of you all as physicians. That whatever's within the practice is treatment, whatever's outside of this enhancement. So the total labeling authority resides within the physician group, that professional community. So whatever you do that you're licensed for is by definition therapy. Whatever you don't do and someone else does is enhancement. Okay, let's not get gobbledygook and whether that means or doesn't mean, but that's how people say abdicate authority to physicians by their licensure, which can create some variances. I'll explain to you in a minute what those look like. The other line is that if you restore someone to normal, that should be in quotes, normal function, right? Versus augmented. So if you restore someone to normal function within that 95% sort of dynamic of that bell curve, then you're doing therapy. If you move beyond that bell curve, you're doing augmentation, yeah, enhancement. And the substrate, the idea here, underlying premise is that we want to create equality of opportunity in society. If this is our society picture, say height, then people should be in that bell curve. Okay, and that's the role of physicians. The third line is that treatments address maladies while enhancements target normal function. What do we mean? The subject who comes to you is having a challenge, a difficulty, a malady, I think you, right, an ailment. So that person, that being somehow is lesser, quote unquote, than the person on the street. They come to you, you help move their functioning, they just change their disorder, whatever else it might be. You are acting upon the substrate that is somehow lesser than. But when someone comes to you who has no lesser than, right? They have normal physiological, psychological, biological function, order, ability, then you're treating them, you're enhancing them. You do anything to that body. Get it? Now it's on the person who's coming to you, their features. So those are the three, generally speaking, bioethical ways in which we differentiate between therapy and enhancement. Now, we're going to, there's two. Yeah, okay, this one. So it's largely the same, but since it's baseball season, I'll use the baseball season. All right, so Tommy John surgery, again, we're not going to, there's no here. You're going to decide, so there's, that, we have 2 minutes, so this group here is 1. That group is 2, this group is, so this group is 2, that group is 3, and you guys over there are 4, and that's 5. To figure out who's in and out, 4 or 3 or 5 people, something like that. We're going to have 3 examples, okay? And you're going to then tell us, you have about 10 minutes total to report back, which are therapy enhancements. So this group, the first group here, you're going to deal with this Tommy John surgery. If you don't know what it is, you can look it up. What is this? Yes, that's cornea. You can, if you said LASIK, that's fine, you can do LASIK. Or this is a cornea removal. So this group here, and let's do these both groups, we'll deal with that one, the eye one. You guys are going to do that one at the end. Both groups. Okay? All right. So you're going to come up with the idea of what's therapy enhancement and then make an argument, share it with your colleagues. So you have about 10 minutes. So you have to use the terms that I gave you in the last slide.
LASIK.
Oh,
We're just gonna use the LASIK.
Huh?
We're just gonna use the LASIK
It's
example.
fine, share everyone's one. Okay, so you're going to convince us of whether these techniques are therapy and enhancement, or whatever you say is gonna be wrong. How's that? Because someone's gonna in this room, I'm sure is gonna say I have a different view. I'm sure someone's gonna say I disagree. So don't worry about it. You don't have to have the exact, you just have to make an argument, right? For why your case is a stronger case, because there's always going to be disagreement. These things aren't necessarily black and white. Okay, so let's start with the group who is doing Tommy John surgery. So does everybody know what that is? No, please explain what it is.
maybe that's or to hopefully at least like baseball players, so their balls and sometimes they were injured in over ligaments, so the ligaments in the elbow. So the surgery is performed to repair the ligaments that are moved or torn. So with that definition, we are leaning towards physical therapy because it's more of like restoring the function of like ruptured ligament. So restoring the function is able to perform because the previous practice wasn't able to perform in the surgery.
Okay, that's the consensus of your group. What did they do with the surgery? You know? Like, how do they do the surgery? What do they do? You guys know? Does anybody know what they do in the surgery, UCL? Go ahead.
They take a ligament from a different muscle that's usually thicker than the original ulnar ligament and replace it.
Yeah. Okay, anybody disagree with that? They're saying therapy because someone tore their ligament. Now you took a ligament from your leg and put it in there. And there's this therapy because of what was it? What were the three characteristics saying therapy because? Restoring original function. So you're acting on someone's got a malady. And that's the dominant way as opposed to therapy versus enhancement. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have a different view? No.
I mean, you can argue it's an enhancement because you're using a thicker ligament than what was originally there. That's
Okay.
the only like.
Okay.
You're actually enhancing the capacity to pitch harder because
Okay.
they have a stronger.
There you go. There you go.
There.
An argument that say whatever itself is not actually better or like the picture comes on actually pitch stronger and sometimes it also takes even like longer to answer.
Yeah, but there's also this phenomenon that sometimes people pitch harder, throw faster because the ligament is now a different ligament, not the one that was there. So their velocity increases. And so that one can make the argument, as she just did, that you're enhancing beyond the normal for the bell curve potentially. Because how many people in this room can throw 100 miles an hour? You can? Oh, you're in the wrong profession, buddy. Right? So those people who can do that are already perhaps at the 99th percentile, I would imagine, of society. Then you enhance them and they become outside of the curve, so they are now superhumans. Okay, all right, anyway, so next one. So either people, there's one group was seeing this as LASIK, the other group was seeing this as a corneal repair. Yeah.
I thought we were doing both. Okay.
You did both?
We did both.
Okay, mashallah, extra credit.
We did LASIK.
Right, my daughter's high school teacher, high school principal, he would call students, mashallah students, or alhamdulillah students. That's exactly what it is. So, all right, so tell us, whoever is the spokesperson for this group.
So first we have to kind of define how we see sight and how important that is to, human life. I kind of think about how, like, I guess from an Islamic perspective, how much Allah talks about like seeing the signs, like on the Day of Judgment, like we will see like hellfire, people will get scared. That I already talked about the blind and the deaf, like how some people will see the signs, but like still choose to ignore. So not utilizing your sight is kind of not using like your human capacity to its full extent. And so like I said, we discussed LASIK and cataract. Just was saying how cataract issues come from sometimes genetic issues and things that, some people are just born with. And so cataract, because that kind of makes your vision blurred, that does impact a lot of your sight, whether something is near or far from you, your vision is going to be blurred regardless. So we kind of saw that as therapy more than enhancement, but then we did factor in age and we were like, it does happen more commonly to older people, despite there being like a genetic factor.
So that's what he said for that.
So he said that it's therapy because, so first you start, I just wanna boil it down. So you're saying sight is a very important aspect of the human being from the scriptural texts. People who age, people who have sort of cataracts, have difficulties and opacities in the cornea. To restore the sight is therapy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Because it is helping someone get back to seeing.
Right.
Which is essential to human being, okay. All right, and then the LASIK? Well, you have fatwa in this room, don't worry, no one's gonna quote it, no one's gonna quote it, so
It's enhancement, again, now, I'm going by what insurances do, now they're covering it much more than they used to be in the past, as restoring sight is essential as well, and this is the way of restoring sight, and it's a long-term therapeutic.
So it's the same thing, it's the same argument.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have different view on that? Well, actually, you go about the same, which one did you do, LASIK or?
Basic.
LASIK, so why don't you talk about your view on LASIK?
So we have two spokespeople because we were a
You
little.
have two spokespeople.
Yeah.
You didn't follow the rules. AB norms.
Students.
Go ahead.
So some of us felt that therapy or LASIK would count as therapy because it doesn't give you necessarily like laser vision or supervision, so it
Okay.
still restores function within the realm of normalcy.
Okay.
And law or major like lack of eyesight can be like a disability of sorts. And so because in those cases it's restoring function and still within that bell curve of normalcy, it doesn't go much beyond that. It could be a clear argument for there.
Okay, what was the other spokesperson?
Yeah, and then the other side, I guess, it's like kind of like looking at what's normal. Coming to like enhancement and all that, like eyesight does worsen over time.
Yeah.
But also like, people aren't really born with like 20/20 vision and all that, so like that like normal depends on like the person themselves. So, with LASIK therapy or with LASIK like treatment, you're getting better than what was previously possible, for example, for that person initially normally. And then also like depending on the person's age, like you're going probably beyond like the bell curve, like for that person's age, like
Yeah.
without surgery.
Which is her point.
Yeah.
So in the years ago, maybe people weren't getting LASIK. And so the curve looked different, but now everybody gets LASIK, insurance covers this, so maybe the curve, right? So now you've shifted the curve. Therefore, what is underneath the bell curve, the area of the curve is now different. And who's doing that? Physicians. Go ahead, we have.
I don't know. Or anything like that, but I mean, I would agree, I got this degree, but.
Self-explanatory.
It's an enhancement, I just was fixing my vision, really bad. But so I'm in the camp of like it being, like just a therapy. But then you have these new procedures that change the eye color of someone, like permanently. So I think that would be an enhancement. I mean, it's not really enhancing anything, like, unless it's like, I think blue eyes are better than brown eyes and I want to have blue eyes. So, but like, where would that fall? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we're gonna get
Definitely
to
not
after,
therapy, but-
sorry. So we're gonna get to some scriptural statements after this. But there is, that's also, we have to think about the spectrum. This is not sight, but showing sight, you're just doing something perhaps cosmetically. Okay, the last two groups had to do with brain function, yeah? Some on Amazon now, man. You guys will get out.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap.
It is.
All right, done. And your students, maybe this is gonna make it, you can help you out or something.
I'm not convinced it works. So we came to a consensus that.
So what is it? Tell us what it is.
So it's basically just a bunch of like herbs and stuff packed into a pill. There's like they go through studies about each of the herbs like having some kind of marginal effect on cognitive function and like some really small study that's not like RCT or.
Very dismissive.
Yeah, and vitamins are most like I did like a rotation of like integrative medicine and like people certified in herbs and stuff like that, and there's ones who told me like very few are actually studied well enough to take and like prescribe.
Yeah,
it's like fish oil and like a few others. Yeah, but anyway, we came to the consensus that whether or not it's therapy or enhancement depends on the baseline of the patient taking it and why they're taking it. If somebody with dementia is taking this in hopes that it will slow down their dementia, that's therapy. If a medical student is trying to squeeze out a few extra IQ points, then it would be enhancement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any dissenting views here? Any other thoughts from the group? You agree?
We thought the same way.
Interesting.
There was an underlying condition that requires it.
But, okay, I'm gonna make a distinction. This is done by who? This is done by? Who does that? It's outside the bounds of medicine. I'm going to Amazon. I mean, Amazon doctors, I mean, I don't know. I know Amazon's doctor, Amazon Health. But if you can just buy this outside of the allopathic medical care system or the professional medical
They
system.
take it times no over the counter without a doctor's prescription.
So there's two things here. So he was making the argument, I'll talk about it in a second, so this is a very good point. So we're talking about, the way that group suggested is that the person who's taking it is the barometer. If that person, the idea that was shown on the slide, the person who is, let's go back. This last bit here, right? If the person has a malady, you've mentioned Alzheimer's, then it's therapy, right? If it's a normal functioning, I hope medical systems are normal functioning. In that sense, right? That's enhancement. I was saying this other aspect here too. So I told you they're all fuzzy, right? Because by one, you might say this is therapy, but by the other, you might say it's enhancement. Tylenol, I'll get to you in 1 second. Tylenol, where does it fall here? I'm asking you. So you said someone has a headache. I'm taking Tylenol. So you're making the same argument as therapy. I can't make this because Tylenol is legislated of what kind of schedule it is, right? The pharmaceutical companies suggest that you can take, so I don't think there's a conflict there. Go ahead.
So what about for licensed cosmetic?
All right, it's very good. So we're gonna get to that. I'm not giving fatwas yet today. No fatwas. It's a fatwa free room. So we're gonna make you think, and you're gonna give them. Sorry. Yeah. So we'll get to this in a second. I don't wanna, because so many things tie in. I wanna continue here, and then we'll talk about what you think fatwa should be. So this was a summary of the first part here. Transhumanism is the following, right? Moving from a human to transitional state to post-human state. There were some exemplar activities. The idea is to remove human frailties and use biotechnology to do so. The second part was about doctors and diseases. I mentioned to you that definitions vary. They can vary by culture and time. They can be based on function of the human being. Teleological role, like so we talked about ears, hearing. You know, people who are of a certain age should be able to have to be reproduced. So teleology based, right? Or subjectively based on the individual themselves, right? How I feel, ill at ease, disease. Healthcare then addresses those needs, and then enhancement and therapy gets clarity, doesn't it? Right? But we know that there's a normal therapy capacity. So I'll say one more thing, then before we move to the Sheikh Hamza's lecture, which I'll kind of walk through. So here in the United States, to address height, going back to the example, I showed you therapeutics that were, hormonally based. There are other therapeutics for height that you don't buy on Amazon, but you can buy a ticket to Turkey to get. Right? So you can break your bone. So there are physicians and there are countries and there are jurisdictions where individuals who are now, those things are usually the therapies hormonally are for people whose growth plates have not fused. But saying that they have fused, what can you do then? Can't give hormonal therapy. So we literally have to break your bones and elongate them. So if you look online, you'll find that there are what's it called? Medical tourism occurs for this therapy. In the United States, it's not considered to be part and parcel of what physicians should be doing. You're not licensed to do that. But in Turkey, for example, you can do that. So people fly across the world, have their bones broken, have rehab for a year, come back 6 inches taller. Right? So the values over time culturally, but even now by states. Okay, and what the disease and what you can do. So wherever there's a need, there is always an ability to market to that need. Another example is that anytime you give a doctor a procedure, the billing for that procedure goes up. anytime you give a doctor procedure, any procedure. So as soon as GI doctors had endoscopy, as soon as our doctors had, I mean, our radiologists had interventional radiology, whatever technique you developed, skyrockets the amount of using that technique. So this is a known fact, right? So the more therapies you can do to try and engage intravenous in the body, the more you will do. Okay, so Sheikh Hamza is not here, unfortunately. And unlike Dr. Muslim, we're not using a video spliced. I thought it'd just be easier to go through the slides. But now we're moving from science. In the seminar, we were having physicians and bioscientists and theologians speak. So now I'm going to walk you through this slide set that relates to the question of transhumanism. You all want fatwas on cosmetic surgery. It might not get there, but you'll see some scriptural texts around this. Okay. So he starts off and he asks the question of the group, and you can read as well as I can, of this verse in the Quran. And the question is, how does it relate to transhumanism? Go ahead.
Talking about like the bounds of what it means to be human. So like in this context, it's like becoming more than human, but not from a technological sense. It's from whatever Shaitan like promised to or suggested to everyone in Islam. So forbade you from this tree, lest you become angels. So become of the immortals, become something more than what you are right now.
Okay. So he's pointing out the fact that Adam and Islam was human, right? Do you know what his height was in Jannah? So maybe humans are very tall.
Yep, and then.
So anyway, I'm not going to get into that. You can read my chapter on this. So anyway, so he's saying that Shaitan is making a claim that if you were to eat of the shajara, you'd become an angel or from those who live forever. So you're saying that you're changing that creation, that being that Adam Islam was part of a satanic inspiration. You have your hand up, Muhammad.
That's not same. Same thing.
Same thing. Okay. The other thing from this verse, so just to keep.
Small mistake in the I am so
Where
sorry.
I didn't.
Quran doesn't have the tanween, it's just a fatha.
Takuna, yeah,
Second
Takuna, yeah.
Second one.
I didn't write it.
Oh, okay.
I think it looks like the
Whatever
green.
It's because there's a hima.
yeah.
So at the hima,
Oh.
it's Takuna.
That's
Yeah, mashallah, yes. Oh, it's the mashallah students here, but okay, no problem. No problem. Okay, all right, yeah.
I think in when we talk about like the definition of like a better state, like Shaitan is saying to Adam alayhi salam that implying being immortal is better than what you are and defining that this should be something you desire.
Right, so this is an improvement or an enhancement. If you become a malik, an angel, you're enhanced, and if you become living forever, you're enhanced. Yeah. So enhancement was always part of the equation here, transhumanism. All right, the other thing Sheikh Hamza would point out is this promise here, Qaladin. So the idea here is that if transhumanists say that we want to become immortal, then there is a notion here that this was a promise made today by biotechnology, but in the past by Shaitan. Okay, so as Sheikh Hamza goes through, he says, okay, let's think about our lives, and our lives, right, have to do with us being not just physical, but having a non-physical component when we think of our lives. We talk about end-of-life care. We're not talking about end of this life care, as Dr. Hassan would say. So if you think about the fact that human beings are, in our tradition, composed of at least two components, then you have to think about our spectrum of life across this way. This is just one example. That we were souls without bodies. And you see the verse there, right? We made the ahad al-alast, and then you were souls in bodies, right? And then you were souls that will then separate from the human body. And then you will have, inshallah, a soul that will be resurrected, that will be joined with a new body, resurrected body. Right? So our journey is, as humans, our nature, the thing that remains constant in a sense, not that it doesn't change, but constant about us is that soul. So then what does it mean to make humans better? How does a human become better?
By transforming the soul.
Right? That then our notion of becoming better might not be related just to the body, but rather the more important substance might be transformation of the soul. And then the verse that you mentioned earlier, that's what I said, that you from the lowest of low, doing the best of the best, perhaps this ways to the soul, not just the body, as you were saying at the beginning of this. So we got back to it. All right, will we be able to make humans better? Can we do so? Yes. Right, so there are, in our tradition, they say that you can become a better human being. Right, if you say the nafs lawwama, nafs ammara, right, nafs mutmainna, if you use that idea. But none of the point being that there are ways to enhance, quote unquote, the human being through spiritual exercises. Let me just use these kind of broad terms. The third question, will humans be able to live forever? She says no, why? You mean to say no?
No.
No?
Every soul shall taste death. No.
She says no, every soul says that. Go ahead.
Well, from a soul perspective, we will be in Jannah, so that idea of
Okay.
our soul.
Okay. Yeah, the verse, mashallah, that somebody you're quoting. You said, say again?
Every soul shall taste death.
Yeah.
But the experience
There you
or
go.
be dead,
Well, very good job.
technically, I
Yeah.
guess.
Very good job, right? Dha'iqatul maut. It's, but it doesn't say nafs, it says, I mean, it doesn't say soul necessarily, but yes, nafs. Okay, so then Sheikh Hamza goes through, again, these are some scriptural indicators to think about. Okay, now that we understand our notion of human beings, or the most important aspect of human beings, and what our end destination, inshallah, will be, inshallah, Jannah, then let's think about where these ideas come from. So we talked about the other idea of وَلَا أَمْرَنَّ what? فَلَيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. Right? This is تَغْيِيرُ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ. That changing the creation of God. This is what Satan promised or that he was going to do. That would command them that they change creation. Now the Mufassirin have different views on what that means. But nonetheless, just like we said that that this waswas comes from perhaps a satanic impulse. So from that one gets this idea that this is from, you can read. That if you were to go attend from these theological notions and you translate that into a fiqhi notion, you get this idea, right? That the fuqaha would then say it's unlawful to change or modify a human being by effecting a permanent change. Okay? But medical treatment is permissible. Now, what do you think of that?
Yeah. Cosmetic appearance versus like if I do a significant permanent change, then having a knee replacement is a permanent change.
This interpretation gives the sort of placement of the doctor, saying if the doctor says you need this medically, then it's permissible. But if you are the patient saying, I want, I don't know, a nose job, or no like doctor saying you're having trouble breathing or your airways are messed up, then that could be changing. Or like it would be in the unlawful category.
So you're problematizing the notion of permanence because different things can be permanent, like knee replacement, which might be. You're saying now the physician gets control of deciding what's in the bounds of medical treatment because the physician says that you need this, not the patient. You have a third idea?
So I think, do you have to put a qualifier that the physician needs to be a practicing or somebody with knowledge in order to make the determination?
Do I need to put?
No.
I don't give 5 plus.
No, but I've heard that in order to get out of like maybe fasting, you need to go to a practicing physician in order to get out of fasting.
Yeah.
So that notion, maybe the determination needs to be from both the fiqh and the mental sense.
Okay, so you're suggesting that there needs to be some dialogue between those two domains of knowledge. One last idea, go ahead.
I think there's like some social component to like what possibly medical treatment, and like sometimes there are people who say like beauty issues cause significant like psychosocial problems for them, and it's like that sort of the umbrella of what is medical treatment.
Yeah.
Thing.
You want?
Yeah, just kind of like adding on to that, like an example would be like, I don't know, like braces, like, you know, it's very common, but you know, it is still like a permanent change. And it's not something that would necessarily, like, for a lot of people, it's not like, oh, it's like a necessity or anything, it's more cosmetic.
So, this is not a fiqh of medicine class, nor an Islamic practice class. Those two things are different. If you want, you can read my books and talk about it. We can buy but in any case, for the purposes of our lecture here, and Sheikh Hamza's points here is that there is this notion of moving from scriptural texts, to theological understandings, then practical, in this case, fiqh understandings. There is a move there that requires some logical train of thought. When you get to the fiqh side, you have to recognize then there is mediation between what physicians are saying, what patients are saying, what ulama are saying. So there's this larger dialogue that needs to happen. You can come up with, okay, some general idea, but the general has to be specified to the context, right? And that requires, again, that negotiation and conversation. But what I would say here, there's also this multidisciplinary notion. What is the problem state? You have to decode it, right? Because if you just say, oh yeah, whatever doctors do, like it's permissible, doctors saying do this, then I mean, I think that's the problem for us, because you guys are defining the disease, right? And so where are you formed? Think about it from a value perspective from the religious tradition. You have something.
Yeah, I just wonder, are there things, I mean, the issues where they will fall into a gray area?
Into a what?
Gray area. I mean, like, you know, cornea. If some people might get it done for astigmatism, so will that be considered a permanent, insignificant permanent change, or?
Yeah.
I mean.
Would it? You're asking me, but I'm not giving you fatwas. You're giving fatwas today.
I'm asking, how would you categorize it?
I am not, this is not the class on fiqh of medicine or Islamic bioethics. I am simply giving you the slides that Sheikh Hamza prepared on transhumanism. And I'm telling you that this doesn't suffice the practical at times, because it requires understanding multiple domains. And for the people here who are being doctors, I want you to recognize how important your both biomedical knowledge is in defining disease and treatment, but now on a religious sense, how much authority, quote unquote, you have to then modify or specify, what the fuqaha are saying. So don't take that very lightly, which might require that for you as fard ayn to know something about your tradition. And unfortunately, there's no place for you to learn that, because you don't get that whatever medical school you're at or in your residency training. Okay. So we're not doing this example, but we're gonna, lastly, he ends with sort of this verse that was started, right? So we have to understand, and his words here, that look, we have an ability to choose. Our potential to move to that ahsan taqweem has to do more than just the body. It has to do with our spiritual growth towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Lastly, there is no such thing as Salma mentioned here, right? There's a verse in the Quran, twice comes up, right? But what's important about that is that the death is an orienting force for our lives, because we know that there's going to be a day of judgment, that we know that our lives will end. This is just a temporary abode, let down, right? But this is not what we're supposed to be aiming towards. That our life is giving some orientation to higher purpose. So removing this end of life, I mean this terminal, this station, let's say the state, is not necessarily something that our tradition is going to say is very important to do. But for those on the transhumanist side, say, we want to upload your minds into some synthetic carbon-based computer system so you can live in a video game for the rest of your lives. That gives purpose. You follow? Like, it's a very different ideological stance. Okay. Yeah, as he says that, our reward is it's inshallah and Jannah, and then we will be خالدين فيها أبدا. Inshallah. Okay, good. Any question? How am I doing in time?
You want to do that 10 days coffee break?
You guys need coffee? Okay, we'll do a 10-minute coffee break. Yeah. Because next you have to start thinking. All right, Bismillah, Bismillah, Rasulullah. We're gonna get started, inshallah. So, this is gonna involve you all doing some thinking on your notepads. Around, I'm not gonna stand there because I'm not lecturing. You're gonna see some video clips now. So, the goal for you to think about and what you're gonna write down is you're going to see some video clips. You're going to try to identify for us what those transhumanist elements are on those video clips. Okay, and then we're gonna have a discussion around them. So this is the first one. It's just a couple minutes long. So identify the transhumanist elements in the video clip, and then we'll discuss what they are. I'll tell you how we do this in Malaysia after we do this exercise, but we can go ahead.
Aren't you a little old to be here? She needs modification. No walk-ins, appointment only. This woman is about to die. Well, you should have started with that. Gonna close her up. Cover all that beautiful machinery.
Okay. So, what do we see? Let's transhumanist and then. Go ahead.
There was the element of extending life, by, like, they said that that person was on the brink of death, so they wanted to extend the life.
Okay.
And then taking pride in that by saying, like, why would you cover up all the things that we've done to make those enhancements? Like, the sentiment behind it is kind of like, not even the actions, but the way we perceive the results.
Okay.
Incorporating super functional functions.
Okay. Anything else?
Even the operator was transhuman.
Operator, home operator?
The
I
provider.
don't know how to define it, is it a certain self or something?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Cybernetic. Body parts. Okay. Anything else?
I guess the exchange of money, it was
It's a transhumanist element?
like it was I guess you would say elective, almost like the exchange of money.
So. I don't get it. Tell me what.
As in like you needed you needed the exchange of money in order to get this. That's what
Fee for service?
Yeah.
So it's not within their healthcare system? I don't know what the healthcare system there is, but it's outside of, okay? All right, so what we had, we don't have time here today. So I think, anybody have anything else? So what we had students do, that's what we saw this like FAD theater company, was that you have to rewrite the story of making it Islamic. You have to come up with an Islamic version of the Book of Boba Fett with authentic cybernetic implants. We don't have time to do that today. All right, but that was the assignment that the students in Malaysia had to do. We had very interesting stories. So for this one, I want to tell you the most interesting one. I still remember that it's okay because these are like jihad bots. No problem. Okay. Khalas. All right, so we want to talk about jihad bots. All right. Okay, the next clip. They're gonna be two back to back.
You're here. How much have you logged?
Zip.
I can't see it.
Manual.
There we go.
This is cool. Let's go. Don't. Got this.
So you just figured you'd come out here to the most hostile environment known to man, with no training of any kind, and see how it went? What was going through your head?
Maybe I was sick of doctors telling me what I couldn't do.
Biometrics are good.
Link 3 is ready.
Keep your arms in, hands in, head down. Down. Just relax and let your mind go blank. It shouldn't be hard for you.
Guess the darkest part of my little life.
Initiate link.
Biometrics are good.
Link 3 is ready.
Keep your arms in, hands in, head down. Down. Just relax and let your mind go blank. It shouldn't be hard for you.
Guess the darkest part of my little life.
Initiate link.
Run sequence unit 3, go.
Launching. I have the first congruency.
That's a gorgeous brain. Nice activity.
Go figure.
Phase lock 40%.
Right, going in. I'm going in 4.
Phase lock 99%. Link is stable.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jake?
Pupillary reflex is good.
Pin response normal. How you feeling, Jake?
Hey, guys.
Welcome to your new body, Jake.
Good.
We're gonna take this nice and easy, Jake.
And touch your thumb to your finger?
Yeah.
Thumb to your fingers.
No problem.
That's good. I can see you can remember that one.
Got it.
Well, if you want to sit up, that's fine.
Okay, good. Just take it nice and slow, Jake. Good. Okay, well, no truncal ataxia. That's good.
Are you feeling lightheaded or dizzy at all? Are you wiggling your toes?
Good, Jake. Distal motor.
Okay. What were the transhumanist elements here?
Bigger slide, you need a slide one?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. Side of the room doesn't want to speak to that. Go ahead.
From having legs that he couldn't like even lift them onto the where he was laying down, and then afterwards, after the transformation, he had functional legs again. And he was like taking pride or like being happy that he could actually enjoy and like moving his feet.
I don't know what to okay. Legs to feet. Okay. Legs replaced. Okay.
Being able to like withstand a more dangerous environment.
So I mean, he has a new body, right? Enhanced, I guess, for environment. Okay.
I guess I'm similar in that at least transhuman, I can make continuous, like a disconnect between himself, his mind, or his new body.
Rejuvenated, powerful.
Yes, the new body is my enhanced, okay.
Dysphoric syndrome.
Yes, it's for you. I don't know if that's just transhumanism or not.
Like Michael Jackson had it, wanted to change his image and all the time. Enhancement, right? I know.
I don't know, it's same soul, but different body.
Yeah.
So the whole thing here is about mind uploading, right? All right. So what is the transhumanist elements here? Well, they think the mind and the body are distinct things. Take the mind, put it in a new body, which is enhanced for the environment. And oh, by the way, there's a little bit of therapy in there as well. Right? Yes. Okay, what would be your Islamic view on this? We write that Islamically. The Malaysian students, I don't remember what they said about this one actually.
Changing the hulk.
Like uploading something.
I mean, this is transhumanism. We went from a human body to something that's not human. So, but the main idea here is about mind uploading, right? So there's an underlying philosophical notion that there's a difference between the mind and the body. But as I mentioned to you way at the beginning, what if the biological substrate is which, if you believe, that's what leads to the notion of the mind and consciousness, then the body that they're in, that brain that was being, oh, they're sinking, whatever, would produce its own consciousness and personhood, right? Like the theory itself wouldn't hold. Because if the theory is the biology leads to the emergence of some property, then that biology is present in the avatar itself. And then when the avatar is, right, so not just a husk or something. So when Dr. Maksud was talking about his experiments, not his experiments, but experiments yesterday, right, about the zombie. If the zombie looks the same, does the same, but there's no lights on inside the head, that's what they're saying here, right? There's no lights on. So you're putting another light in, right? But then theory breaks down. Okay. In any case, we're going to go to a different exercise. The underlying point here is, did you guys have siblings? Yes. You have younger siblings?
Yes.
What do they watch? Do they watch these things?
Anime.
Anime. I don't know anime, so I can't comment. But the point here is that in your culture, in the popular culture, the notions of transhumanist ideology are ever present. So if you grow up thinking that you can become Spider-Man, right? Where we just saw that thing, right? Or Superman, right? Or Avatar Man, or whatever it is, then why is it not appropriate for those doctors who have the scientific knowledge to make us those Supermen, Spider-Men, avatar. Well, why not? If that is the cultural paradigm under which you live, then use the profession to facilitate those goals. So we talked about the biopsychosocial cultural obstruction disease. Now this is where the cultural expectations influence your profession. And if this is all that's embedded within the ideology, or if these are ideologies embedded within the popular culture, then your professional boundaries will change. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because it's just, oh yeah, this is what we should be doing, or we can be doing, right? Why not live forever? Why not have cybernetic implants? Why not? Why not? Why not? Okay. All right. So now those were, we didn't show the Chappie one. Chappie was the same thing. Because, you know, when I did this, people are like, you're very old. Avatar? What are you talking about, right? And Chappie, these are things that you guys don't know about. So I tried to at least have one that was Boba Fett, maybe. But they said, those are old. I had Star Wars before. I had Star Trek Enterprise before. Or like, what are you talking about? So, okay. So we're going to do this. Do we have the sheets? Here's the exercise for the next 20 minutes now. It's gonna involve you looking at your phones or their laptops. The same teams. So I think team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4.
3 groups here. This one.
Well, this is one group here. There's one group here.
Oh.
And the one group back there. And then those two people. So. And then this group. You can give more if you have more copies, you can get more copies. There we go. And over there.
The art to read the article, I can look it up on my phone.
Okay, so here's the, well, here's what you have, and here's your assignment. So this is not Khayal theater, this is practice medicine theater. So you have in the packet that I gave you, these are just brief, it's a CNN story of people, these are people who are alive today. Okay, this is not science fiction, this is not popular culture, these are people who live today. You're gonna pick someone. And you're gonna pick that person, one person in the story, you're gonna look them up on your line. And then amongst your group, you're gonna kind of decide whether what they desired was treatment or enhancement. You're gonna then make an argument as a Muslim physician, should you have helped this person? Would you have helped this person? Why or why not? And then you're going to report back to the room, okay? So there are many different people. There's not their whole biographies in there, but they mention some people more than others. What I like to do, however, is make sure that we all don't pick the same person, okay? So you're going to tell us who you pick in about 2 minutes. We're gonna make sure that you don't pick the same person, all right? Okay, so look through, pick a character, an individual, and then you're gonna tell me, and then 1 minute actually, tell us the group who you're picking.
There's the colors with this,
Dr.
Hold on, I'm still trying to.
Looks like he's got a rely on her. On arm.
I'm not sure. So there's one guy who can't see color. So that's the antenna guy, the one with the little thing. So if you have an antenna implanted to his skull, it allows him to perceive colors as audible vibrations.
Any group got their person? But Liz, they picked Liz, so that's off the table now. Neil, you have Neil Arbison is picked, okay. Next.
Yeah.
So then there's also this cyborg guy, maybe that guy.
That group, they pick someone? No, not yet.
Rob.
Rob? Okay, they got Rob. All right. So the 2 groups left.
There's Liz, there's. Liz.
James Young.
Should we do James Young?
James Young, okay.
James Young.
Now who you guys want? Four people off the board. What do you have? Sorry? Let's pass. They got this, first one.
James Young is, I guess, also a basketball player.
James Young's already gone.
Beyond arm, it was so much.
Who? Bob Spence, you guys pick Bob Spence. You guys late to the party.
Just deciding if, as a Muslim doctor, would you have one person? And if it's enhancement.
Sophia, go ahead. All right, so you guys got about 18 minutes to investigate, come to consensus, decide who the spokesperson is. Then we'll have 12 minutes of conversation. All right, Bismillah, Bismillah. So we're going to now have share and compare from this collective wisdom of this group, inshallah. We're all going to share, inshallah. So just like we did last time, but we're going to start on this side first. You're going to tell us your individual, what their malady was, and then you're going to answer kind of what your group consensus-wise thought was enhancement therapy, and would you have done this, right? And these are separated because I gave you some bioethical guidelines here, and you might say they're different, or it could be the same. Okay, and since we don't know anybody that you're telling us about, we might not have much disagreement. So we'll see. London.
So we had Rob Spence, known as the I-board.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to give you a mic?
It's okay.
Okay, go ahead. You have the I-cyborg.
I-cyborg, yes.
Okay.
So his story was that he had a gun and he didn't shoot his eye, but he like hit his eye with the gun and lost sight. And instead of getting his eye replaced with like a prosthetic, he asked them to install a video camera into his eye socket. So this video camera, like he literally plugs in a charger to charge it can only film for like an hour and 30 minutes. And for context, he's a filmmaker. So he wanted this so that he could consistently film video for his documentaries and different things. So what we decided was that this is most likely, we would call it an enhancement, not a therapy, since at this time, this was like 10 to 15 years ago, the video camera does not actually connect to his brain. It doesn't add any sight back to him. It's just simply a video camera that's sitting there for his work and his everyday. We kind of likened it to like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses or the Google Glass in this, like now with technology where you're basically just putting a camera on your face and you're filming what's going on around you. As a Muslim doctor, we said we would most likely not have helped in this specific procedure. If it was a prosthetic or something that just covered up the eye area, we would aid in that. But actually installing the camera, we felt was a little ambiguous because we would be more of a vehicle in helping him do his career path, but what is stopping him from like just getting a regular camera or something of that nature? Yeah.
Okay. No. What is anybody a dissenting view from the rest of the crowd?
But what's the difference between him like having it attached to his eye or just like wearing with a GoPro? You know what I mean? Like, so why would it be a procedure that's controversial? You know what I mean? Because it's like, doesn't matter if he's putting it in his eye, it's empty anyway. You know what I mean? Or like putting it around his neck or something.
So what we said for like the controversy aspect was if that person goes and buys a GoPro or something, they're responsible for what they do. But as a Muslim physician, being the person that is actually installing the camera for them, right? You're kind of aiding in whatever they choose to do after that as well.
Yeah, but I'm saying
that's
is
a little
like,
bit of
they didn't like pop their eye on purpose to put the camera in. It's just an empty space anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if there's a difference between like helping someone like that and it doesn't matter what, it's not actually enhancing anything. It's just literally putting a camera somewhere on their body, like where
Yeah.
it's just not the way, I guess, or something, you know?
So there's another person that you'll hear about shortly. Who had just put something on his body as well, so we'll see what this group says, so play through, but our point, I think the point is a good one, and we should bear this in mind. That this wasn't, if I understand correctly, they're making this distinction here, that this is just inserting something into an empty socket. It wasn't actually connected to his brain, so there's no signal from the camera going to his brain. It's simply a recording device in a biological empty space. Okay, but nonetheless, they felt that this was not appropriate as a Muslim physician. Okay, second group here. Here we go. Neil, right? Neil, you're talking about Neil?
So Neil,
Just project so we can hear you.
Neil was born with achromatism, so total color blindness. And he had this antenna where inserted where it's directly connected to his
That's him. That's Neil.
directly connected to his occipital lobe, so basically he hear colors through like sounds and vibrations. So I guess the first part, it's the therapy enhancement. He first said yes because
You said yes, what? This therapy or enhancement?
to the therapy because it did at least help in terms of restoring function of like at least the integrative and the second half of like potential pathway process. But then there's an enhancement because he can also hear
You can perceive infrared and ultraviolet colors, sound spectrum as well.
yeah, so it went beyond those, so. That's the, yeah, so enhancement. As Muslim doctors, we did not help. And I think what it came down to is what we think is essential of the human experience is not just the fact that you can sense it, but in terms of how you do sense it. Because this antenna is kind of bypassing the detector part of the eyes and optic nerve and just connecting it to your occipital lobe. We think it should be straight how you see like through your eyes when traveling down to the occipital lobe.
It's gonna be important for your session. Dr. Yusuf, okay, go ahead.
And because we see that like design as part of it, just.
You said, you see what? Sorry, I missed.
Like we think like that is the essential part of the human experience of what, at least the design of it, and that's how we should at least be preserving or maintaining that type of way.
Okay.
We just didn't feel comfortable,
Okay. Anybody have any other views on that? Just hearing the story?
Like this, like the way that's like they're go back bypassing how like the sensory input normally is for a human, like
Yeah.
contrasting that with like a hearing aid that even could have like some level of like enhancing capabilities of like blocking out background noise or like attuning to the environment, but like because it's using like the normal like pathway for like hearing loss or like sensory non hearing loss, this would be like still different.
You're like altering the sense. Instead of seeing color again, you're hearing color.
Yes, so I think this is an important distinction point that you're making at least. That you're hearing colors, so the vibrations are being translated, so you're hearing colors and expanding spectrum of colors, which is why you're saying it's enhancement. As opposed to seeing colors, which would have been restoring functionality to the optic sort of pathways, right? Therefore, it's enhancement. As a Muslim, you feel there's something about the experience. You also mentioned the notion of design, that the way that the body was created, something's wrong here, something's off here. Because you're doing something beyond that, you're having an antenna stuck out of your head. Yeah. Okay. All right, I have some thoughts there. That's interesting. Go ahead. What's the next group? Go ahead.
All right, we had James Young, which is the guy on the right there. Essentially what happened is he was standing on a train platform and he got kind of like pulled by the train and then was dragged for like 50 meters. And then he woke up with his shoulder pretty much like amputated, like below the above, like before the joint as well as a below the knee amputation. And so he got this bionic arm that not only functions as a normal arm, but also has things like a USB import or port, as well as like he can like see his Twitter feed on it and such. And then to give additional context into like, you know, care for the person as a whole, he's an avid gamer, so not being able to use his arm for the controller is a big deal, but impressively he was able to compensate and learn how to use the controller with like his chin and tongue and lips somehow with the other, as well as the other arm. And so for us, we believe that, you know, this kind of straddles therapy as well as enhancement, because not only is he getting an arm function, but it also has beyond the normal, you know, functions of a normal arm of being able to see your Twitter feed and plug in a USB to your arm. And so for that reason, we would have helped if it was restoring function through like a regular prosthetic or something a little bit more conventional, but because this goes above and beyond, it is in the realm of enhancement that we don't particularly agree with. However, there is a distinction that it's not an implant. It's, as you can see, it's strapped on. So then we have the question of like, in what way is that all that different from an Apple Watch, where you can also see, you know, your Twitter feed and do some other things or track your steps without like, in a way that's removable. So he's actually crowdfunding to get it to become an implant. But, you know, that we do see it overall as an enhancement, though there is that huge caveat of it being removable.
Might not be a permanent change that's on the bottom. Okay, any thoughts from the rest of the class? Go ahead.
But kind of related to what we were talking about with the camera and the eye, it's
Yeah.
like there's something missing, and how important is it that that space, because you're, as a human being, you're used to having all of your functions, like even if you're missing, like for example, I got one of my fingers stuck in a car door, and the nail ended up coming off, and then it grew back. But I still felt weird having that missing, even though now like it's back. And so having something missing, even something as small as that, it feels off. And so like, what's the benefit to the patient to having something in the eye socket or having something where the arm used to be? And like, how much benefit does that add in terms of, even if it's like something that's removable or something that doesn't add that same functionality back onto it? Like, even just having something there to have that sensation that, like, we learn about like phantom pains and things like that. So it's like, if you can counteract that somehow.
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add to the James Young, and we were specifically about like if we would help him or not as Muslim doctors. I personally was on the fence because I think it's like pretty cool, and I think the argument is like, you know, this is just like the watch. It's Apple Watch, right? It's like removable, it's waterproof, and you can probably charge it, you know. But there's no issue. Everybody's wearing an Apple Watch, so there's that thing as well. And the other thing that I was interested in learning was that this arm was actually made by a gaming company to enhance gaming capabilities for gamers. And because this guy ended up with a traumatic accident who was a gamer, he was selected by this to be a test subject. So it wasn't like he wants to initiate some enhancement of his body. It was just like, oh, there's opportunity. As a normal guy, he probably is not able to afford even this. So he took advantage of that. And I think that context is also important, because when we think of like, who are the people who are amputees, like especially today, this technology of amputation, like a lot of people in Palestine and children in Palestine, there's this movement to help create 3D prosthetics for these children. But then if this is a large gaming company based in the US or whatever, another people who have amputees are army veterans, right? So what if this is just like within the context of how can we enhance our army soldiers to continuously be, you know, tools of the government, despite not being able to actually physically be in the field. We give them this bionic arm, they can continue to control drones and whatever not. So there's like that context of like, what are we contributing to if we did help this person?
Interesting. Good. Great viewpoint.
I just have a question. All these things are obviously foreign body stuff. So do they ever have any rejection to the things that have been, especially the eye case, you know, the camera, you think?
Do you find a problem? The eye camera, did they have rejection?
We were talking about that.
It's not implanting, it's just the space, right? It's not it's not connected to the brain. But
I was to say, we assumed that they like closed the back of the eye.
Right.
Not the brain, and we couldn't read anything about the brain.
Yeah. Let's get the other, I have some comments to share, but I wanna hear the other two groups, so you guys had.
Irish, who is a 53-year-old background. She has a son who has type 1 diabetes. She was looking for answers for him so she can fix him for infinity. So she talked to her physician to get gene therapy on him, but she was rejected. She has no medical background to be specific. So in 2015, she did receive gene therapy in Colombia, the country. And now she has her own biomedical company, which is for anti-aging and pharmaceuticals. So coming back to the idea of what is gene therapy and what
What did she have done?
so she got this injection basically, which elongated her telomeres. And then she rejuvenated herself by 25 to 30 years.
But you can't tell by looking at her. She still looks her age. So it's like, the telomeres, right? That's 1 out of 12 biomarkers that they said we've like discovered so far. And so I think her having a stake in like a biotech company kind of encourages her to push this irregulated procedure for others, because it seems like she does have a potential financial gain. So she's like a very shady person to be pushing this. Like she said, no medical background, college dropout, like she's not as educated as she claims to be.
But beside educational background, we decided that aging for us is part of normal. It's not a disease. Aging is not a disease as Muslims. It's part of aging, and as Muslims, because we want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have other means on this life. So as Muslim, we would not convey this idea of living forever or anti-aging.
Okay, all right, I have some thoughts there too. So yeah, I was gonna say, go ahead.
Let's say, like earlier in the lecture, there was the hadith that it defined aging as a disease. There's no cure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's haram to treat it. Like if the treatment comes, or like if something comes out that makes us able to live for 200 years instead of 100 years.
Yeah.
That wouldn't necessarily, because it's impossible to live forever. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So when Dr. Mother comes back, you're gonna talk to her about this, okay? When she comes back, remind me. So she's gonna address this issue. She doesn't know it yet, but she will address it.
But to close off, yes, if it's cancerous cells, of course, we need to kind of rejuvenate and treat those cells. We can use this technology in that manner. But if it's just like, growing part of aging, like 70, 80, like that's, we should not use.
But I just want to ground it. So we were looking at, would you have given her the injection to increase her telomere size? Right, that's what she asked. No, you would not have. You would not have, because you believe aging, telomere is just one marker, as you mentioned, but aging is part of the normal human experience. And so you don't want to, and so that you wouldn't have. But how's the quality of life change? By change?
Quality is going to.
I see. So you the outcome is one that you don't agree with. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, that group, what you got?
So we got Sophie.
Okay.
And Sophie is a sleep robot. You have no health issues as presented in the article. Literally, her selling point, unironically, is that she is a quote mentally active Caucasian woman. She also has Saudi citizenship.
Yes, I see.
What?
Yes, that's the most important point.
All these socio-political questions to function there. Okay.
He's a citizen, so that means something else.
I found that out. I was making a joke like, oh, well, what's the purpose of this robot? And then I was like, well, what's the purpose of humans? And then I was like, what if the robot was made with the intention of serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then I was like, what if it's a Dawa robot, right?
Dawa robot?
Yeah.
What's a Dawa robot?
For those on campus.
So, and then, then we, the Saudi citizenship part. And then I was like, oh, so it's an
It's our robot because it's like, it's showing that like women in Saudi Arabia don't, when it was like put there, it was like, oh, women in Saudi Arabia don't have rights. But this robot without a hijab and without without having to cover up can go and give speeches. So it's like questions of women rights, questions about like racism and like the kafala system and how come like people who have been working there for decades can't get citizenship with this robot. So anyway.
Yeah, lots of thoughts there.
Yeah, lots of thoughts here, but as a Muslim doctor, we wouldn't really need to help this robot because not even a medical issue. Also, I'd like to note that on top of this title, it says beauty. So these aren't necessarily questions about like health treatment. It's
Interesting.
Well, okay, so a few thoughts here. So before I give my thoughts, Dr. Oda, you missed it. Two groups actually have a question about your work.
What's that?
What's that? Yeah, so this group here was talking about why can we not, so this group here was dealing with a patient who had her telomeres extended through genetic therapy as an anti-aging exercise, and they decided that aging is part of the human experience as a Muslim, and therefore we don't believe aging is a disease. That group over there was saying, but if you have technology to live hundreds of years, then why not? This is good for you. And I said, I will not address this. I will let Dr. Roda address this question because Dr. Roda has done some extensive research on this topic.
It's time for the next seminar.
But aren't there evidences in story? I mean, I know it's different because they're prophets, but they literally said they're not ready to die.
Dr. Roda is the expert on this topic. She's written a book on, she's written a book. She's written a chapter on radical life extension.
Keep it there secret so that they have to buy our books.
So Dr. Roda's online?
No,
No, so then you can answer.
no, but it's gonna.
There's a video.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're playing.
Oh, I've got to show you this video. Okay. So inshallah, so my just a few thoughts I'll end here, but there's an argument about what that means. If you can talk during the break, so I do want Dr. Rod to work on this, so you can speak on that. Couple of things to think about, just to tie the seminar in the end close. So physicians are involved in all these things, right? The question here about the question about doing something to your body, one might say, well, you can do whatever you want to your body, but then there's a question about what is our responsibility to the body, it's amana. So aside from the issues about whether it's enhancement or not enhancement, there is typically some notion of what responsibility do I have to this thing that was given to me, right? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how should it be? So how should it be taken care of? Because we asked about it, right? And so, but then some might say you could do, but still that you taking that into account, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not harming some people, perhaps someone would say. Yes.
I don't need to like move on, but just saw something. So in your lecture, you talked about how culture and time and space kind of changes what's normal, right?
Yeah.
So what if 100 years from now, it's very normal for people who have amputees, for example, having this or a bionic eye, an actual bionic eye connected to the nerve, and like that's the norm.
Yeah.
Right? So then all of these procedures that you're saying like we don't treat as a doctor, wouldn't you treat them at that time? You know, like it's gonna happen anyway, it's inevitable and it's starting, you know what I mean? So like when's the cutoff?
Well, the question is how much of our values are being brought into our professional duties, and how much time we're spending and thinking about it. This article was about beauty, but this is the idea of beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And we said that some disease is dis-ease, subjective. So the point of this is destabilize, as I said in the beginning, your notions of disease and doctrine, and make you really think about how much of your values are located and what is the mission of medicine.